The first thing I felt when I came back to life was the ridged metal edge of my USB drive cutting into my palm. Not the cracked screen from the hospital tablet where my file name had been entered wrong. Not the cold pressure of the oxygen mask. Not the frantic voice saying, "The backup is corrupted," as if corruption were an accident and not the last word my life had been built around. Just a small silver USB drive, warm from my hand, hanging from a blue lanyard around my wrist in the St. Brigid Digital Innovation Lab. The label I had taped to one side was still there, slightly crooked but intact. Candidate 42, Maya Ven, Original Build Archive, Do Not Format. My laptop sat open in front of me. The project submission portal showed 1 hour before final upload. Beside the laptop, my printed checksum sheet lay under a clear sleeve, with 3 SHA hashes copied neatly in black pen because I had learned from my father that if a machine can lie silently, paper should be invited into the room. I was 17 again, 10 minutes before the Callister Technology Scholarship demonstration. In my first life, Mr. Roland Hale, Director of Digital Learning, competition convener, and father of the boy whose polished demo had been built from my stolen draft, stopped beside my station and whispered, "Format the USB, Maya. If the panel sees duplicate files, they'll assume you copied the leak." I formatted it. My original project history vanished. His son presented my interface logic with cleaner graphics and 1/2 marks. Years later, after I became a digital evidence analyst who never trusted a file without its metadata, I died during a data center evacuation when corrupted access records sent the safety team to the wrong server room. My last thought, as the emergency lights flashed over racks of machines humming like they knew exactly what had been erased, was simple enough to become a law: save the drive. Then the lab returned. My USB was still in my hand, and Mr. Hale was already walking toward me, with his tablet glowing blue. A USB drive looks harmless until someone asks you to destroy what is inside it. It is easy to treat it like a cheap object, the kind students lose at the bottom of bags or leave in library computers with names like FINL Final L, 2 docs. But mine was not just storage. It was the only complete chain of authorship for my project. The Callister Scholarship Final required every candidate to present a working civic tech prototype, submit the current build through the school portal, and keep an offline archive containing drafts, source files, version notes, local exports, media assets, and a build history log. The archive existed because internet uploads failed, cloud timestamps could be overwritten, and digital projects were too easy to accuse of being copied when all the panel saw was a clean final interface. My USB contained my messy truth: broken code, ugly mockups, failed login screens, notes to myself written at midnight, prototype folders named badly, screenshots from weeks before anyone else knew the idea, and a hash sheet showing the files existed before the leaked design appeared in the shared student server. It was not elegant. That was why it was powerful. It proved the finished project had a history. My name was Maya Ven, and I had always trusted drafts more than final versions. Final versions lie. They stand straight, wear clean fonts, pretend they were born confident. Drafts tell you where the thinking tripped. My mother worked in a community legal center scanning documents for tenants, workers, and families who arrived with plastic bags full of letters no one had helped them understand. She taught me that the first version of a form often mattered more than the polished statement submitted later because it showed what someone knew before fear corrected their grammar. My father repaired second-hand computers from our kitchen table after a warehouse injury made lifting heavy equipment impossible. He kept old hard drives in labeled boxes and said, "Deleted is not gone. Gone is gone when someone with power decides the record is inconvenient." My little brother Nico thought USB drives were tiny robot tongues and once taped googly eyes to mine. I left one eye on for luck until the final week, when I peeled it off because I wanted the archive to look serious. In the second life, I almost wished I had kept it. The drive had deserved a witness with eyes. The Callister Technology Scholarship was St. Brigid's grand prize for students who could build something useful rather than merely talk about innovation. Full final year tuition, a placement with the City Civic Data Lab, a university mentor, and a funded laptop powerful enough that my old machine would no longer wheeze like it had asthma whenever I opened design software. That year's theme was access before efficiency. Candidates had to design a digital tool that helped people navigate a public service without excluding users who lacked perfect documents, stable internet, strong English, or confidence with forms. Most students built pretty dashboards. I built Bridgebox, a low-bandwidth document checklist and case tracking tool for people applying for urgent housing repairs. It allowed community workers to upload evidence offline, generate receipt logs, translate required documents into plain language, and flag cases where missing paperwork was likely caused by access barriers rather than noncompliance. It was ugly at first, then less ugly, then actually useful. My mother tested it using fake tenant cases and said, "This is the first school project of yours that makes me want to swear less at councils." That was the highest praise available in our house. Mr. Roland Hale ran digital learning with the relaxed confidence of a man who had never lost work because a public library computer timed out. He wore black turtlenecks under expensive jackets, carried a tablet instead of a clipboard, and used words like ecosystem, frictionless, agile, and trust layer until students stopped knowing whether he had explained something or fogged the windows. Parents loved him because he made St. Bridget's sound futuristic. Teachers relied on him because he could rescue corrupted files, adjust submission windows, and make inconvenient server logs disappear behind phrases like sync conflict. His son, Theo Hale, was the school's technology prince. Smooth presenter, beautiful slides, clean interface design, perfect confidence. Theo was not talentless. That mattered. He could make a prototype look like a funded startup, but he did not build deep. His projects were glossy surfaces over borrowed logic. If a judge clicked one layer below the demo flow, things broke. My project was the opposite. It looked plain, but the logic held. Mr. Hale knew that because he had access to the student development server where our drafts were stored. He also knew my offline archive was the only thing proving the leaked Bridgebox design had started with me. The leak appeared 2 days before the final. A project folder called accessbridge_theo draft showed up briefly in the shared showcase server, then vanished. 3 students saw it. One sent me a screenshot. The interface layout was not identical to mine, but the case flow logic was offline evidence queue, community worker receipt generation, missing document barrier flag, repair risk escalation.
My names had been changed.
My rough icons were replaced. My ugly gray buttons became soft blue rounded rectangles. A person who did not know the work would think Theo and I had simply reached similar conclusions. A person who opened my USB archive would see the exact sequence of drafts that led to the logic weeks earlier. Folder 01. Bad checklist. Folder 02. Offline queue test. Folder 03. Receipt generator. Folder 04. Barrier flag prototype. Folder 05. Combined Bridgebox. Folder 06. Final build. Each had timestamps, local notes, screenshots, and exported test files. The USB was not just backup. It was the fossil record. In my first life, I was frightened enough to be useful to him. At 10:12, Mr. Hale stopped beside my station with his tablet under one arm. "Maya," he said softly, "we have a problem." My stomach dropped. With my upload? With the archive. His eyes moved to the USB drive in my hand. There are duplicate project structures circulating. Because Theo's folder copied my logic. He sighed like I had said something childish. Accusations before demonstration are dangerous. I have earlier drafts. That is exactly the issue. I stared at him. How are my earlier drafts an issue? If the panel sees duplicated flow files, they may assume you downloaded and modified the leaked material after it appeared. The timestamps prove they came before. Local timestamps can be manipulated.
His voice softened.
You know that. The panel knows that. A messy archive can hurt you more than help you. I should have called the external assessor. I should have opened the checksum sheet. I should have trusted the ugly folders. Instead, I listened as Mr. Hale made destruction sound like strategy. Format the USB, he said. Submit the final build only. Let the work speak for itself. But the archive is required. The portal copy will satisfy submission. If anyone asks, say your USB was corrupted. Better a missing archive than a contaminated one. Won't that look suspicious? Not as suspicious as keeping a drive full of files that resemble Theo's leaked folder. Then came the pressure points, each one placed exactly where he knew I bruised. Your bursary renewal is tied to this scholarship. Your mother's legal center partnership request is with our Community Innovation Program. Nico's coding club application is still pending. A student in your position cannot afford a plagiarism cloud. In your position. The phrase had a way of shrinking the room around me. He held out his hand. I can format it cleanly for you. I should have refused. Instead, I inserted the drive into his tablet adapter. I watched the folder window open for 1 second. Bridgebox_original archive, draft_receipts, offline Q_test, hashes, screenshots, notes_to_self. Then the format window appeared. He clicked quickly. Too quickly. The progress bar filled like a little execution. When he handed the drive back, it was empty. There, he said. Clean. That word should have made me scream. Clean means nothing when the truth is supposed to be messy. During the final, my demo worked.
But I bought Laudet Opferline.
It generated receipts. It flagged underreported hazard risk. It explained documents in plain English. The external judge, Ms. Imani Clark, asked smart questions and seemed impressed. Then Theo presented. His interface looked better. His transitions were smoother. His colors were beautiful. But beneath the polish, his core flow matched mine. When Ms. Clark asked both of us for development history, Theo produced a polished design timeline exported from his father's school account. I produced a final build and an empty USB I claimed had corrupted. The panel did not accuse me outright. They did something worse. They treated my authorship as unresolved. My originality score dropped. Theo won by 2 marks. At the ceremony, Mr. Hale said his son had shown elegant innovation grounded in user need. I stood in the back with an empty drive in my pocket and felt like someone had formatted a part of my chest. The first life after that became one long recovery attempt. I tried file recovery software on the USB, but the format had overwritten enough that the folder structure came back broken. I found fragments, half a note, corrupted screenshots, a folder name without contents. Not enough. Never enough. My appeal failed because the school said both projects addressed a common theme and my archive was unavailable for verification. My mother's legal center partnership went elsewhere. Nico did not get into coding club. I left St. Brigid before final year and studied wherever I could. Later, I became a digital evidence analyst, then an audit specialist, the person who asked for original files, not exports, hashes, not assurances, access logs, not explanations, metadata, not vibes. People said I was intense. I was. Formatting teaches intensity. I died in a data center evacuation caused by a fire suppression fault and a corrupted access map. The safety system had 2 server rooms mislabeled after a renovation. One access log said the archive backup rack was in room B.
It was in room C.
During the alarm, staff were directed away from the wrong area, while smoke entered the corridor near the real backup rack. I went back because the audit drive containing chain of custody logs for a public inquiry was still connected to the rack, and if it was destroyed, an agency would claim every missing record had been lost in the incident instead of altered before it. Heroic? Maybe. Stupid? Also maybe. The emergency lights strobed red. The server fans kept humming. I pulled the audit drive free, slipped on suppression foam near the threshold, and hit the floor hard. My head rang. The access panel on the wall flickered between room B and room C like even the building could not decide where truth belonged. Save the drive, I thought. Then the lab returned, and my USB was still warm in my hand. This time, before Mr. Hale reached me, I made the archive impossible to quietly destroy. At 10:05, I called over Ms. Clark, the external technology assessor. Can you verify my USB archive before demonstration? I asked. She adjusted her glasses. Before the scheduled archive check.
Yes.
There was a leaked folder matching my project logic. I want the original development archive logged. Her expression changed from polite to sharp. Show me. I inserted the USB into the external laptop, not my own. The folders opened.
Ugly, Alive, Mine.
She copied the directory list, generated hashes for the main archive, scanned my printed checksum sheet and wrote in the log, 1008, candidate 42 USB archive present. Development folders dated prior to leaked server folder. Hash sheet matches local files. Drive retained by candidate. Then she placed a blue evidence clip through the USB lanyard. Do not format this drive, she said. If anyone suggests it, call me. My throat tightened. I will. Mr. Hale arrived at 10:12. Same tablet. Same soft urgency. Maya, he said, we have a problem. My archive has been externally verified. His eyes went to the blue clip. There it was, the pause that proved the first life had not been misunderstanding. Verified. Directory, hashes, timestamps. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. That may complicate matters. It clarifies them. Local files are not definitive. Then the panel can compare them with the server logs. The panel may see duplicated structures and infer contamination. The archive predates the leak. Timestamps can be manipulated. Hashes are logged now. His voice lowered. Format the USB. No, the word came out before fear could decorate it. He leaned closer. Maya, I am trying to protect you. From my own evidence. From a plagiarism allegation. Formatting the archive would create one. Your family cannot afford a misconduct cloud. There it was. Your bursary is not on this drive. Your mother's partnership is not on this drive. Nico's coding club is not on this drive. You are being naive.
No.
I am being backed up. His mouth tightened. Hand it to me. No. I raised my hand with the USB still looped around my wrist. Miss Clark. The lab quieted. Laptops hummed. A student at the next station stopped adjusting her slides. Ms. Clark came over. Issue. I said clearly, Mr. Hale is instructing me to format my verified USB archive. Mr. Hale smiled with tired patience. I advised reducing contaminated local material. Ms. Clark looked at him. The archive is logged as evidence. Local timestamps are unreliable. That is why hashes were generated under external observation. The duplicate server folder is part of the investigation. Her voice stayed calm. Candidate 42 retains the USB. It is not to be formatted. Then, to me, proceed with demonstration. I presented Bridgebox with the USB still looped around my wrist. That mattered more than anyone else knew. My demo was not beautiful in the way Theo's would be beautiful. It was functional. I showed how a community worker could create a case offline, upload photos when internet returned, generate a timestamped receipt for the tenant, flag missing documents as access barriers, and escalate high-risk repairs based on building conditions instead of complaint volume. Ms. Clark asked, why preserve offline receipts when the portal stores submissions later? I answered, because systems often treat delayed upload as delayed action. The receipt proves the person acted before the network did. She wrote that down.
Good.
Good judges, write down the sentence the system will later try to forget. Theo's demo came after mine. It was gorgeous. Blue gradients, smooth buttons, animated transitions, a dashboard that looked like it belonged in a council press release. He called it Civic Bridge. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because theft often changes the curtains and leaves the floor plan. He showed offline case creation, receipt generation, barrier flags, escalation routing. Ms. Clark let him finish. Then she asked, can you show your development archive?
Test my.
Of course. Mr. Hale stood near the system's desk, tablet under one arm, face calm. Theo opened his archive folder. It had 6 subfolders, all created within the last 48 hours. Design flow, receipt module, offline queue, barrier flag, final build, presentation assets. Clean names. Too clean. Ms. Clark asked, do you have earlier drafts?
Theo shows my tin nen.
I consolidated them. Do you have hashes? Not prepared. Screenshots from earlier development? My father may have server logs. The room shifted toward Mr. Hale. That was when his face began to pale. Not all at once. First around the mouth. Then beneath the eyes. Ms. Clark opened the school showcase server logs on the external screen. The vanished access bridge _ Theo draft folder appeared in the activity history. Created from Mr. Hale's staff account. Copied assets from the student development sandbox. Deleted after 7 minutes. Then she opened my USB directory log. Same logic folders, older timestamps, messy development notes, screenshots weeks earlier, hash sheet verified before his request to format. She did not need to accuse anyone. The order of files did the speaking. Digital evidence is cold, but when it is finally allowed to speak, it does not soften its voice. Mr. Hale said, local development environments can produce misleading timestamps. Ms. Clark said, the screenshots include system clock, folder path, and emailed test receipts sent to the candidate's mother 3 weeks ago. My mother, who was not in the room but had unknowingly become a timestamp witness by complaining about my ugly interface in reply emails, would have enjoyed that. Mr. Hale said, students often converge on similar user flows. Ms. Clark clicked to the deleted server folder. This was created from your staff account. A sync test. Using candidate 42's sandbox structure? Silence. Theo stared at the screen, then at his father. Mr. Hale's face went fully pale when the next file opened, a private note in his tablet backup, synced automatically, titled Theo Final Demo Risk. The visible line read, if Maya retains original USB, authorship challenge fails. Encourage format under contamination concern. There are few sounds more satisfying than a room understanding a sentence at the same time. The formal review happened immediately. My mother arrived from the legal center still wearing her office lanyard. My father arrived with Nico, who carried an old broken USB drive like a lucky charm and whispered, robot tongue survived. Across the table sat Mr. Hale and Theo. Theo looked less like a prince and more like a boy who had followed a polished path into a wall. Ms. Clark projected the evidence. My verified USB hash log, my emailed test receipts, the server folder created from Mr. Hale's account, the deletion record, Theo's compressed recent archive, and the note advising that I format my drive. Professor Imani Vale, the external civic tech judge, asked Mr. Hale, why did you instruct candidate 42 to format the only verified original archive? He swallowed. His face was still pale. I was concerned about contamination. Your note says the authorship challenge fails if she retains it. That line is being taken out of context. My mother muttered, there's always context when they're caught. Professor Vale heard. She did not disagree. Theo spoke before his father could build another fog machine. I knew the folder came from Maya's sandbox, he said. Mr. Hale turned.
Theo.
I knew. His voice shook. I told myself Dad had permission to use anonymized structures for coaching. He looked at me. Then I saw your receipt module name in an old screenshot, and I knew. Honest. Ugly. Useful. Why didn't you stop? I asked. He looked down. Because my version looked better. There it was. The whole theft in 4 words. I thought if I made it cleaner, it became mine. It didn't. I know. His face crumpled, but he did not cry. I respected that more than I wanted to. The decision was clean because the USB was clean in the way evidence needs to be, not pretty preserved. My authorship was confirmed. Theo was disqualified from prize consideration for contaminated project provenance. Mr. Hale was removed from all digital assessment systems pending misconduct review. The official findings later stated that he attempted to induce destruction of verified development evidence, referenced family vulnerabilities in a coercive context, used staff access to copy student sandbox structure, created and deleted a derivative folder from his account, and prepared strategic notes for his son based on another candidate's project. The report did not say he stole my work to give his son a cleaner stage. Reports rarely say steal when they can say unauthorized access. But it said enough. The scholarship announcement happened in the digital lab because Professor Vale insisted the results stand beside the machines that had nearly erased it. My USB drive sat in a clear evidence sleeve on the demonstration table, blue clips still attached. The Callister Scholarship recognizes innovation that serves access, but access begins with proof of authorship and process integrity, Professor Vale said. This year's winning candidate preserved the original development archive, demonstrated a working civic tool, and showed why receipts matter when systems fail. My mother started crying before my name. Nico whispered, "Bridgebox supremacy," and my father quietly told him never to say that again. The 2026 Callister Scholar is Candidate 42, Maya Ven. I walked to the front with my knees, shaking only a little. Ms. Clark handed me the USB first before the certificate. "Keep this," she said. "Messy archives save clean work." Professor Vale handed me the scholarship letter and policy tech placement. "Your project had a memory," she said. "You protected it." That was when I nearly broke. Because in the first life, the project had still existed in my mind, but without its memory, everyone else treated it like a coincidence. This time, the memory had stayed plugged into the world. Mr. Hale resigned before the board completed the full digital access audit. Officially, he stepped down to restore community confidence in innovation governance. Unofficially, his face had gone pale in front of a server log that remembered what he deleted. St. Bridget changed the rules. Student sandboxes were locked from staff copying without external approval. Development archives were hashed before demonstration. Staff with relatives in the final could not access project repositories, and no candidate could be advised to format or delete local evidence under contamination concerns. Boring reforms. Beautiful reforms. Every future USB drive became harder to wipe. Theo found me outside the design lab a month later. He held a notebook, not a laptop. That was new. "I'm sorry," he said. "No performance. No careful opening." "Not enough," I said. He nodded. "I know." We stood in awkward silence beside the vending machine, humming like it wanted gossip. "I'm rebuilding from scratch," he said. "Something different?" "Completely." "Good." "It looks terrible." "Better." He almost smiled. "Ms. Clark said ugly drafts are where ethics starts." "She's right." He looked at my USB lanyard. "I thought polish made something mine." "Polish makes theft harder to recognize." He nodded, face tight. "I know now." We did not become friends. But months later, I saw Theo present a small, clumsy tool for tracking food bank pantry stock, and when a judge asked about development history, he opened a folder full of terrible early drafts without flinching. Growth is sometimes letting people see how badly you began. The scholarship changed my family first in practical ways. Tuition cleared. The city civic data placement gave me a real laptop that opened software without sounding like it was begging for mercy. My mother's legal center did not get St. Bridget's glossy partnership, but Professor Vale connected them with an open-source housing rights group that actually used Bridgebox's receipt logic. Nico got into coding club through an external scholarship and immediately named every project folder something absurd like do_not_steal_this_Nico_version_7. My father bought a fireproof drive case and labeled it MAI, Originals, Touch and Die, which my mother said was not legally ideal but emotionally accurate. Years later, I became a digital evidence and public systems auditor. My work was full of USB drives, server logs, source folders, deleted drafts, overwritten metadata, suspiciously clean exports, missing repository histories, and people who said sync issue when they meant someone with access changed the story. I helped community organizations preserve project authorship, tenants preserve digital repair evidence, students preserve submission logs, whistleblowers preserve files before agencies could call them corrupted. I kept my old silver USB drive in my office, retired, unreadable now because even survivors age. Under it was a label. Do not format the memory that proves the work. The data center accident from my first life did not kill me in the second. Because I recognized the room location mismatch during a public inquiry audit, I forced the facility to reconcile access maps before the safety inspection. The manager said the labels were legacy issues. I asked whether he wanted legacy issue written beside emergency misdirection risk. He relabeled the rooms. The backup rack moved into the correct access map. On the night the suppression fault matched my first death, staff evacuated through the correct corridor. The inquiry drive was already mirrored off-site, and nobody slipped on foam while carrying the only copy of the truth. Nothing happened. Nothing is what survival looks like when someone saves the drive before the fire. I saw Mr. Hale years later at a civic tech conference. Of course, he had reappeared. Men like him rarely vanish. They become consultants in the language that should have convicted them. His panel was called Ethical Innovation Workflows. I did not attend because irony has limits, but he approached me near a charging station. Older, thinner, still in a black turtleneck, holding a tablet like a shield. Maya Ven, he said. Bridgebox became quite influential. Because the archive survived. His smile tightened. That day was complicated. Your note was simple. Theo suffered after Callister. Theo learned to keep drafts. You are still unforgiving. No, I said. I am still backed up. His tablet screen dimmed from inactivity. For 1 second, his face went pale again before he tapped it awake. Memory is a device that never fully formats. My mother eventually opened a small forms, scanning, and digital help desk inside the legal center. She called it Save the Drive because our family had stopped pretending subtle names protected anyone. People came in with eviction photos, broken upload receipts, benefit forms, school portals, appeal documents, and phones full of evidence they were terrified of losing. My father built a little shelf for labeled USB drives and external hard drives. Nico designed the logo, a tiny silver drive with wings and one remaining googly eye. On the wall above the scanner, my mother painted, "If it proves you made it, do not delete it to look clean."
People laughed.
Then they backed up their files. Now, when I teach students building digital projects, I begin with the ugly folder. Not the demo. Not the pitch deck. The ugly folder. Show me draft 1. Show me the broken screen. Show me the note where you misunderstood the problem. Show me the receipt your test user hated. Show me the export before the redesign. A project without a history is not always stolen, but a student without a history is easy to accuse. Keep the drafts. Hash the files. Email yourself copies. Save the USB. Let the work have a memory. The simple version is true. I was reborn. I saved my USB drive.
He told me to format it.
His face went pale. But the simple version cannot hold the little silver drive warming in my palm, Ms. Clark's blue evidence clip, the first life progress bar that erased my authorship, Theo admitting he thought polish made theft his, my mother's accidental email timestamps becoming witnesses, or Mr. Hales staring at the note that said the authorship challenge failed if I kept the archive. It cannot hold the girl who formatted her own proof because a man-made mess looked dangerous. It cannot hold the woman who learned that clean is not the same as true. If someone ever stands beside your laptop and tells you to format the drive, delete the drafts, wipe the folder, clear the archive, remove the ugly versions, or clean up the evidence that proves your work existed before the polish theft, do not click. Unplug if you have to. Call the external assessor. Generate the hash. Copy the directory. Email the proof. Let the messy folders stay alive long enough to tell the story. And if his face goes pale, when the log shows he needed your memory erased, do not call it revenge. Call it digital provenance. Save the USB drive. Keep every draft. Let the archive remember.